Good evening and welcome to the July edition of Library Lovers on Zoom with Maya Linnell. I'm your host, Maya Linnell, and I'm so pleased to be with you tonight. Now, do you love a dark and deeply funny whodunit? Perhaps you've read those beautiful glossy home magazines and you've wondered what it's like to stroll through those houses and tell the stories of the people who live in them and inspiring folks that also share those pages inside the magazines. Or maybe you would like to find out exactly what happens when a book wins an award like the Miles Franklin and reservations start flooding in. Well, you are in the right place. I'm really thrilled to be hosting Library Lovers for you. I'm Maya Linnell. I'm a rural romance author with Allen & Unwin. I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, baker, and a green thumb, and I'm also a lifelong library lover. It gives me great pleasure to bring you some very special guests tonight. We have Benjamin Stevenson coming to us from Penguin Random House. We have Kirsty Mckenzie, who is the fabulous editor of Australian Country Magazine. And we have Meaghan Drew from Yarra City Libraries in Melbourne. So thank you very much, and sit back, grab yourself a cup of tea. We're going to be asking plenty of time for you to ask questions as well. So if you would like to ask our guests what they like about writing, what they're reading at the moment, perhaps you'd like to tell us where you're tuning in from tonight, just pop those messages in the chat. And I look forward to getting through to those at the end of each special guest. We'll have time to answer your questions. So first off, tonight's guest, Benjamin Stevenson. Now, this story had me in stitches. It was such a fantastic original book, probably one of the most creative stories that I've read in quite some time. There's a really lovable character. His name is Ernie, and he's a very earnest chap as well. And when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, this is a little bit like what would happen maybe if Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie had a love child who was obsessed with Cluedo and watched things like Murder, She Wrote. So if that tickles your fancy, then sit back and get ready to enjoy some questions. Welcome to the show, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Look, it really is lovely to be able to chat to you because I know you're a busy man. Not only do you write amazingly best-selling books that have just completely taken the country by storm and sold internationally, you're also a comedian and you work inside the publishing industry with Curtis Brown. What a busy man you are.
Yes, I always figured that I'll keep doing everything until one thing starts working out for me, and then I'll just quit everything else. But unfortunately, everything started working out at around the same time. So I've just kept going because I just love doing what I do in all three areas.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you obviously do them very well because there has been so many people that have recommended someone in my family has killed someone to me, and I saw it all across social media. I loved the different reviews and the people that described it to me as a little bit like Fleabag, that TV show. Do you get that comparison as well?
I've seen a bit of that. I must admit, I'm not overly aware of. I'm aware of Fleabag, and I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge as a writer and other things, but I can't say I've really watched that much of it, but people have mentioned that, and I think it's absolutely fitting from what I understand. But the other things it goes surprisingly left field. Some of the comments I get, the more obvious ones are things like Knives Out or the Thursday Murder Club, but someone the other day compared it to the movie Scream, which I think is completely apt as well. So yeah, I think it pulls from a lot of places, or it reflects a lot of places, a lot of writers that were probably in the same place as I was, even if the homage is accidental.
Wonderful. And one of the things that really caught me right at the very front of the book, there is a section here, and I'd actually loaned this to my daughter. She stole it from my book pile the second it arrived, thinking this looks right up her alley. And as soon as I took it back off her, I was instantly horrified that she had dog-eared one of my pages. Now,
oh yes,
people can see this, but it actually says, fold this page here so that we can reference it throughout the story when we start reading, which made me laugh right off the bat.
There are a lot of moments in this book where, because I wanted it to be like a book, it's a book that knows it's a book. And so little things like it has fold here or whatever sort of contribute to that. But there are a lot of things where I email my publisher and said, am I allowed to do this? Can we do this with typesetting or whatever? Yeah, and I thought that would be fun because, you know, it's annoying when you're trying to flip back to the epigraph just for something that's not important to the story, but you might just want to refresh your mind or something. So I thought, why not?
Absolutely. And I also quite liked right at the start, there's a list which tells us exactly which pages the murders are on. And Ernest, throughout the story, reminds the reader, now, just a minute, wait up. There's not going to be a murder here because, as you saw in the front of the book, there's not another murder for another 10 pages or whatnot. I thought that was a really wonderfully inventive device to, I guess, to make people stop and laugh and surprise them along the way. Was that something, Benjamin, that came through, you know, in one of your first drafts, or was that an idea that your publisher said to you, hey, how about we put this in? I haven't seen this done. Let's do it. Where did that idea come from?
It's definitely all me because the fear that I instilled with my publisher and the typesetters when I introduced the idea to them, if I could properly explain it to you, you would never believe that a publisher would come up with that idea. But it's sort of an idea that I'd always wanted to try for a couple of reasons. The main one being, well, two reasons. The main one being that I think it's an interesting act of suspense in order to give everything away, because I'm telling you when things happen, but I'm not telling you why or how. And there's a special sort of kind of writing you can do with pace when the audience knows something's coming, but if you play it off and then you can still surprise them with it, or so they're unexpected by how fast it happens or when it happens, because they're thinking, hang on, this was supposed to happen here and it hasn't happened yet. Bam, there it is. You know, or you can you can play with that honesty in the same way that a magician who's showing you the cards over here is actually doing something over here. And so it was really an act in suspense. It was, I'll tell you what to look for, and in doing so, I will distract you enough that I can build suspense. And I always wanted to try that idea. And then the other thing is that this is very much an homage to Golden Age mystery fiction. And Golden Age mystery fiction, as per the rules in the front of the book, but the main essence is play fair. And modern psychological thrillers love the unreliable narrator. And I thought that playing fair is the complete opposite of that. So I wanted to do the reliable narrator. And the way to be reliable is to completely spoil everything in the book in the first chapter, and to see if I could still pull off a mystery novel with a good twist. After deciding I would do that was really sort of my goal of the book.
Well, I think you hit that ball right out of the ballpark, because it certainly threw me for six when I got to the different bits of the story that I wasn't expecting. So really well done, Benjamin. Now, for those who haven't actually read the book yet, who haven't been lucky enough to pick up a copy and enjoy it, can you give us a little bit of a nutshell synopsis of it, please?
Sure. So Ernest is invited to a family reunion at a mountaintop ski resort, and his various family members are all attending the reunion, including a brother of his that's just got out of prison. And it's a bit fractious, the whole family. They're all sort of at each other's throats. And then a serial killer starts picking them off one by one, and a snowstorm traps them at this mountaintop hotel. But the thing about the Cunningham family is that everyone in the family has killed someone in their past, and whether they're murders or accidents or, you know, what is your definition of killing sort of comes into it, but they've all killed someone. So the question is, in this family of killers, can Ernest find the murderer before too many of them get picked off?
Oh, I think that's wonderful. Now, you've got to tell me, because I know that sometimes I'd got myself confused by someone in my family has killed everyone. Everybody in my family has killed someone. Have you made that mistake on screen, on stage? Please tell me you've fluffed it up somewhere along the way.
Plenty of times. Yeah, sure. No, it's I think it's a long title, and I was quite affectionate of having such a long title because, I don't know, I think there's something charming about a title that's ridiculous is the wrong word, but it's over the top, and the book is over the top, and you know, that sort of adds to the prestige and the parody and the affection and all that. So I wanted the long title, so I completely dig it when people sort of stumble over it.
Oh, that is wonderful and very forgiving. Now, Benjamin, you have a lot of feathers to your bow. So not only are you a best-selling author, you also are a comedian. You've done stand-up, sell-out stand-up comedy shows throughout the world. You're also a literary agent with Curtis Brown. So anyone who knows the publishing industry or is an aspiring writer will certainly be bowing down before the title of Curtis Brown. Which one do you call your day job?
Well, comedy is not my day job because we do it at night. So that's an easy one to rule out. And writing I do wherever I can. So it's my every time job. I'll do it anytime I get 5 minutes. I'll jot out a couple of words or whatever. So I guess in the traditional sense of the meaning of the word day, I do most of my literary agenting during the day. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it certainly would keep you very busy, all these different things that you've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And I like being busy. I get a bit bored, I get a bit restless. But I'm also quite a slow writer. Like I'm not one of those writers that has 3 books on the go at the same time. I'm just sort of writing on the one project. And so it's really good for me when I get stuck or when I'm writing something that just hasn't quite unlocked itself for me. Then instead of switching writing projects where I would stay jammed, I can switch projects entirely. I can go and do a show, I can read a manuscript, and it can sort of open up the rest of my brain in a nice way too.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was listening to an interview you did with the Booktopia podcast, and you're talking about your writing output and how you really like to finesse those scenes or chapters before you then move on. It's a really solid way of working. I guess at least you've got quite a polished piece as you go through.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty harsh self-editor, and I don't personally benefit from sort of getting everything on the page and then going back to the book as a whole. I find it quite challenging to do really big chunks or to look at a book that if you've written 50,000 words in 3 weeks and then you've sat down and you've decided that, right, half of this is good and the other half has to go. I would really struggle with that sort of process, which I know works for a lot of writers. So I tend to write quite slowly. 500 words a day is pretty good for me, but some days it'll be 50 or 100 words. And what I do is I just edit to where I'm up to, and then I'll write 200 words, and then I'll edit it all again, and then I'll do the next bit. So it feels like it never grows, but it's always getting better and refined. So that means when I type the end for the first time, it's probably equivalent to a sort of second draft at that stage because I have redrafted it. And then I have to do the regular editing. It's by no means perfect, but I think it works for me, even though it is quite torturously slow at times.
I find that really interesting. And I think there'll be a lot of writers out there that find that very heartening because that's their process too. And it's really interesting how everyone does have that different process. I worked through my first draft of the book that I'm working on for next year. And I got to the end and I had this awful fear that what if I got hit by a bus and my publisher said, well, you know what, mate, we're contracted for Maya's next book. We're going to see what it is. And there's this mess of 100,000 words. It doesn't make sense from the start to the finish. And I just had this real fear. And I've spoken to other writing friends about it. And they've said the same thing, that it's been almost debilitating thinking, if someone picked this up in this state, they would wonder, who on earth this writer was and, where was the person that put out the other few books?
Yeah, exactly. And that comes through in edits for everyone. I think with a novel like this, especially that's sort of defined by the amount of clues that you can pull together at the ending, it's really a novel that only, and because of all the postmodern ideas in it and the sort of the twists, like the page numbers, it's really a novel that only in the last 10,000 words did I realize was going to actually work as a novel. And so the only way to do it was to finish it. But because I'm so slow, so the same things, 75,000 words in, I wasn't at the point where it felt like this was going to work as a book because everything pays off at the end, but I hadn't done any of it yet. So yeah, I relate to that immensely.
Wonderful. One of the things that I also wanted to say is that it's described as a really darkly funny story. And I found there were moments when I just laughed out loud, which I love from a book when I can pick it up and get some real belly laughs through it. But there were also some really poignant moments where I just went, oh, I didn't see that coming. That was a real surprise. Oh gosh, now that character that I had this preconceived notion about, the mother in the book, she's very hard to, I guess, to deal with as a reader. But then when you find out different parts of her background, you go, oh, I felt like a terrible person for judging her when she's gone through all these different things. That was really well done, I thought.
Oh, thank you. I wanted it to be charming and fun and funny in a way, but I also wanted it to be not that comedy books aren't real books, but I wanted it to be a real book, and comedy works best when you've got great characters and proper character arcs and a really strong mystery for a crime novel. And so the humor in the book, which was so important to me, but it was very important that it was quite limited from where it came from, in that the humor all comes from Ernest's narrative voice, and none of it comes from the plot mechanics or at the expense of the characters, which I think tips it. If you do it that way, it tips it into farce. That's when you have people slipping on banana peels and making character compromises from the sake of a funny scene, which is totally valuable in that way. But when we're trying to do like a really strong mystery, so I had to make sure that I was hitting all those beats and that I was getting those poignant moments and I was getting those surprises, because half the surprises in a good mystery novel comes from the character turns, more than just whodunits. So yeah, that was really important to find that line, and that's how I sort of did it. Was it all comes, the funniness, which was really important to the book, all comes from Ernest's eyes, and so it meant that I could be serious when people do start dying. Although my publisher did take out a couple of jokes, because she was like, she said there was one thing and she's like, somebody died 2 pages ago and nobody has mentioned it. And I'm like, oh, all right, I should probably have them grieve a little bit, I guess, because I'm quite mean. I just kill people off. People say, some authors are like, oh God, it was so hard for me to kill this character. I'm like, whatever. Nah, if it'll surprise the reader, it doesn't affect me one little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we've got room for questions coming up really soon. So if anyone's got a burning question they want to ask Benjamin, pop it in the chat box and we'll get to it. Now, I love hearing what's happening in different people's kitchens or gardening. So Benjamin, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening at your place at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you told me this question was coming up, and my garden is non-existent, and my kitchen is a seriously shameful lack of activity most of the time. But I did get a new tea cabinet, which we picked up at an antique shop for like $20, and we thought we could put tea in that. And then my wife's dad refurbished it and cleaned it up, and now I have a tea cabinet, which is very nice for writing my next book. So that's the new kitchen thing.
That's fantastic. I like it. And you know what goes really well with tea? Scones with jam and cream.
Oh, amazing.
So this is going to be my supper tonight, but one of the things that I love baking is scones, and our next guest will have a bit of a chat about those scones, because she knows all about my special scones recipe. But I thought, well, that pairs in perfectly with your prop of a tea cabinet. Very nice. I think I need to try and find myself one of those.
Oh, well, I just went to the effort of dragging this wooden thing from the kitchen, and you've gone and baked scones. So I think you've outdone me quite significantly there. But it looks delicious.
They're one of my favorite easy go-to recipes, because if I've got people coming around for brunch or for lunch, it's quick, whack together a batch of scones and they're done, mixed up in about 7 minutes, and they're in the oven and out in about 12. So they look fancy, but they're actually really simple, which is always good.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Now, we're all about libraries and about books, so I'd love to hear from you, Benjamin. Do you have any special memories of libraries from your childhood, or a librarian that was really special to you?
I mean, I love libraries. I've written in a lot of them. I like, I mean, they're just a perfect spot to find a quiet space and do some writing. And across the country, it's always so nice to be able to go into any of them. I particularly like the one in Perth and Adelaide town centres, because that's sort of when I do shows there, I feel the furthest from home. And libraries, they all feel the same in a really nice way. They're all obviously different, but so that's what I like about them. But in terms of special memories, exactly, I don't really have many. where I grew up, I did these little theatre shows when I was a kid, very dorky amateur stuff. But the theatre was one half of the library. And so we would go to the library in the morning before the rehearsals, and then we'd go to the theatre show. And I like doing that. So I'll say that.
Lovely. Well, I think that's fantastic. Now, I've just had a message from Julie in Cairns, and she is wondering what the significance of the pigeon on the front cover is. Now, I think you can tell it a lot better than me.
Yes. So, well, this is so his name's Frank, and he's a pigeon, and he is wearing a medal which he won in a war. So he is relevant, and I just love that he has a medal, and he's in the book, and that's about as much as I'll spoil. But yes, Frank is a war hero with his own medal, and that sort of plays into some elements of the book.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. Now, the next question I wanted to ask as well is book recommendations. As an author, and particularly as a person that works inside a literary agency, you would have books coming out your ears, Benjamin. What can you recommend to us today?
Yeah, there's so many, but I always like to recommend a book called The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is by Stuart Turton, simply because with everyone in my family has killed someone, I really wanted to try and write something that I'd never read before, and try and push the envelope and try and break some rules and really sort of do some crazy stuff. And the first book that I read that really swung at the fences and did that was The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is a Regency set, so sort of Jane Austen period murder mystery. So there's some Agatha Christie in there, but with a time travel loop in it. So a Groundhog Day problem in which the guest at this manor house keeps waking up on the same day in which the heiress gets murdered. And it's just fantastic. It's clever, it's crazy, it's zany, it's so gutsy. And it's so beautifully written as well. He perfectly apes the time period, and it's sarcastic and funny, and so I love it. And then obviously any Australian crime at the moment is so incredible, and I heartily recommend. I've been lucky enough to read early versions of Jane Harper's new novel, which comes out in October, and Chris Hammer's new novel, which comes out in October, and I recommend them both for the end of the year. But one that just came out last week is called The Whispering by Veronica Lando, which is set in the rainy Queensland rainforest, and it's a really gripping sort of bush noir and a really vivid and evocative gothic kind of setting, and I just loved it.
Oh, that's wonderful. They both sound like really good books, and I've seen that Whispering has been coming up a lot in my Instagram feed as well. So
it's got a gorgeous cover too. Yeah, it's very, very Instagrammable.
Yes, and that actually ties well because we've had a message come through from Jason and Lee and Gaffer, and he's wondering about the design of the cover. Were you delighted with it when you saw it? I think it's a fantastic, perfectly evocative cover with a couple of little motifs in there as well.
I absolutely loved it. Penguin are really great. They involve me in the discussions quite heavily. Publishers don't have to with authors. It's sort of their call, and oftentimes as an author, and I know this from other books that I've written, they'll say to you, "We understand why you want this on the cover, but if you want it to sell on the shelf, we're going to have to do what we recommend," and they're always right. But this one came up with this design. It was absolutely fabulous. We went back and forth. The original cover was black, actually, and then we changed it to white. They changed it to white about 2 months from publication, 2 months from printing, because they just over summer, the sales director was just walking through a bookshop and thought that a white cover would really pop out on the shelves just because of what was on the shelf in the shop he was in, and so we changed it. And there was a lot of discussion over whether the pigeon stayed or went off the cover, and so we chatted back and forth about that and changed our minds a couple of times, and I'm so glad that he landed on the cover. But the text design, I mean, incredible, and they had that from the very first draft. They had all that clever, I don't know the word for when you mimic a letter with an image, but they had all that baked in from their very original concept, and I was just blown away.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Benjamin, for being our guest. And everyone in my family has killed someone is out now with Penguin Books. It's going to be coming to the big screen, or the small screens near you sometime soon as well. And I wish we had have had a chance to chat more about that. But if people are keen, they can follow you on Instagram. It's the Stevenson Experience. Is that right?
Yeah, at Stevenson Experience on Instagram. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. It's time for our next guest tonight. Kirsty Mckenzie works as the editor of Australian Country magazine. She loves traveling, she loves food, and she loves finding out what's happening across the country in different authors' lives. She's got great guests throughout her magazines. Thank you very much, Kirsty. If you can turn your microphone and your video on, and we'll say hello. Are you there, Kirsty? I can't quite see you. Beautiful. Now, Kirsty is tuning in from Sydney tonight, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Can you see me? Yeah. Okay, I've joined you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be chatting with you tonight, Kirsty.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Maya.
No worries. Now, can you tell us briefly how you came to your role as the editor of Australian Country magazine?
Yeah, I've been a journalist all my working life, and I started with a previous version of the magazine as a contributor. I am still a freelance journalist, so I started as a contributor, and then 10 years ago I became the editor. So I just scaled up my involvement, I guess you'd say, with the production of the magazine.
Well, that's a great progression, and you get to tell these wonderful stories and travel the country, and you also like traveling internationally too. I bet you're really thrilled that all these COVID restrictions are lifting.
Yeah, a bit apprehensive, but I'm just delighted in terms of getting on the road and gathering material again. It's been a challenging couple of years, to put it mildly, to be producing a magazine which tries to have a national reach and cover all states and territories. So yeah, tricky times in the publishing world, and we've been pretty lucky to have made it through, I guess.
Yes, there's certainly not. There's a few less magazines on the shelves these days. When I go into the news agency and browse, it must be very sad to see them come to an abrupt end like that. Yeah.
But I have great faith in the future of the niche magazine. I even notice my younger colleagues and friends are still buying publications, maybe not necessarily hard copies, but certainly subscribing to digital or online platforms. So everyone's still interested in the written word. It's just a different format.
Yes, I was actually reading an article from the ABC the other day, and they were talking about a librarian who's in the Mid-Coast libraries, and he was told, X amount of years ago, libraries are going to be dead in 5 years, and I'm sure it's been the same. Newspapers are going to be dead and magazines are going to be dead, but I think people quite like that physical book or magazine in their hands after a day spent looking at the screens. Do you find that type of feedback from your readers?
Absolutely, yeah. And you only have to go to a writers or a readers festival to see all those people queuing up to buy books to know that the age of the book is, well and truly not over yet.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Kirsty, every time I pick up your beautiful Australian Country magazine, I'm swooning over these lovely houses. I'm looking at the kitchens and thinking, oh, I could perhaps style mine like that. When you walk into a house and to do a story, are you taking notes of what you could do at your home? Is it a glamorous spot as well?
Oh, goodness, no. My place is so pedestrian. It's embarrassing. You wouldn't, I just wouldn't let you come and have a look. But what I love about going into other people's places is often not the money that they've spent on something, but the ingenuity that they've used to make something out of, people find things on the tip, people find things in op shops, repurpose, milk crates and things that are completely utilitarian into decorative items. And it's that really the homes that money can't buy that really appeal to me, and the quirky factor. People who've got, recently I stayed in a place that was it was a chicken shed, and it began life as a chook house, and now it's a guest house, on a farm, obviously, but really clever use of space and use of colour, really, and done on a budget. So I admire that as much as I admire, I respect an architect's skill, but I admire individuals' creativity even more.
Lovely. I'm sure you would see some really great examples of that.
Yeah,
it would be so nice to share that through the magazine with different readers.
Yes.
And people can, just a reminder as well, that people can borrow all the books and all the magazines on the Libby app as well. So that digital version of the magazine is available for people to download, and they don't have to wait as well. So simultaneous, unlimited loans as well, which is really lovely for people that do want to pick it up through their local library. And I know lots of local libraries also stock the hard copy too, which is nice, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, people often probably think that the role of the magazine editor, Kirsty, is very glitzy and glamorous, and you're invited to soirees and lots of fantastic events. Is that the case, or is it
Really?
a little bit more low-key?
We're a very small team. So there, in terms of staff, I have a designer and a sub and a proofreader. I write a lot of the copy, not because I like the look of my byline, but because that's just the financial reality. And then we have some contributors, mainly photographers, who are spread out around the country. So there's not much glamorous about it. I'm thinking, I immediately, when you mentioned this to me earlier, I thought one of the first fashion shoots we ever did, for instance, I had the location in mind, and I just didn't know how I was going to make it work. And I said to my friend whose property we were shooting on, well, we need somewhere for the model to change. And he said, it's fine, I've got it sorted, I've got it, it's all organised. And I thought, oh yeah, this will be interesting. Anyhow, we got there, and the dressing room was a horse float. So the model fortunately just rolled with it, and it was a very clean horse float, I will say, but it was a horse float, and so she was changing in the horse float. And then there are other things. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors goes on, and when you look at the page, you don't really see that sort of hard work side of it, or the challenges. It's very because we're small, we don't have a lot of staff. I mean, for example, on a fashion shoot, we'd have hair and makeup artist, photographer, me doing, everything from ironing to coordinating the accessories to making sure the model gets changed. And it's just somehow, I mean, I even cook the food that's on that we serve on location, because normally our locations are not somewhere where there's a cafe and hot and cold running, water. So it's very just, be a jack of all trades and get on with it. And somehow we managed to scoot on through.
Oh, that's fabulous. Very ingenious. And I think that's really good. And that ties in well. We've got a question from Mandy in Mount Gambier. And she's wondering, have there been any front cover, disasters where there's been, in the back of the photo that you haven't noticed until it's blown up to this big? There's been, something that shouldn't have been in the background of a home or anything like that?
Not on Australian country, but I work very closely with my life partner, who's a photographer, Ken Brass, and he and I managed to get a fly in the middle of a DPS, a double page spread in Gourmet magazine once upon a time. It was just, and that the thing is, nobody sees it until it's in print. And then there's this fly sitting on the prawn right in the middle of the picture. We incidentally had already sprayed that food with Aerogard because the flies were so bad that we were trying to do anything. So yeah, far from glamorous occasion, beautiful food, all ruined. No one can eat it. And there we go. And there's still a lousy fly got into the shot, and we didn't see it until it was printed. And then, of course, everybody in Australia saw it because they all told us about it.
Oh, I guess that is like when you pick up your finished copy of your book and you're reading it, and the page that you open it to has got a typo on it. It's just that little human error element.
Oh, yeah. You just reminded me of another one. On the inside front cover of the magazine, we at the last minute, we insert the cover picture, and we have gone to press with insert cover pic here. So, you just have to just move on in those situations because it's gone to print. There's nothing you can do about it. And, I guess if it were a terrible thing, then you'd have to reprint. But in a situation like that, you just have to grin and bear it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, well, I love those insights, Kirsty. I think it's really neat to have a little bit of an insider into the magazines and some of the things that can possibly go wrong on shoots. And
and they do.
That's wonderful. Now, can you tell us your connection to libraries? Have you borrowed magazines from libraries as a child? Did that have any role in you deciding to become a journalist and then an editor, or what can you tell us?
Well, I grew up in outback Queensland, so everything came by mail. So we got the mail once a week on a truck. And so our library deliveries came from the local library on the truck. Magazines were a huge part of that. Everything came once a week. So even the week's newspapers came once a week, which is just absurd when you think about it, that my father would get 7 days of newspapers and then sit there for a week and read the news a whole week late. He would listen to we would listen to the radio as well, but it was still, everything came on the mail. So library books, totally at the mercy of the librarian, bless her. Usually it was her soul who would select books according to, I guess, what you'd chosen in the past or what she'd chosen, and some feedback that my mother provided. I'm not sure how it worked, because she was able to foster that love of reading by sending these books out, and then we send them back on the next mail truck and wait for the next lot to come.
Oh, that is fantastic. Gosh, you'd certainly value every single delivery, wouldn't you? You'd get really excited when that truck rolled down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, to receive a book, our house was full of books anyhow. And my mother was very big on reading to us as children. So we couldn't escape it, really. It was going to be there whether we liked it or not.
Wonderful. Now, I can see that someone's raised their hand. Louise, who's up in Queensland, I believe, has raised her hand. I'm not sure whether we can turn your audio or video on there, Louise, but I'm assuming, I know that Louise is a journalist herself as well, so she was probably commiserating with you on the fact that you had that fly and that spread. So I know that she's done quite a few magazines and home and building type of content, so I'm sure she's a kindred spirit there.
Feels the pain.
Wonderful. Now, Kirsty, can you tell us what is happening in your kitchen or your garden at the moment?
I'm a bit like Benjamin. My garden is an embarrassment. Herbs, I'll always have herbs. Even at this time of year, I try to keep them going. So no, not much in the garden. The kitchen is always busy, and I'm lucky. I get a lot of books for review, just like most of us do. And I've got an exciting new book, which just came the other day, and it's called Chinese-ish. And it's by two young Melbourne women who are of mixed, I guess you'd say, heritage. And so their book is a similar hybrid, I guess you'd say. It's so one of them is an illustrator and the other one's the cook. It's Roisin Call and Joanna Hugh have written this book, and I'm just dead excited to start cooking from it. Lots of Sichuan recipes, stuff that I love. I love that spice. So even the only thing I've made so far is smashed cucumbers, which is a salad I really love when I have in a Chinese restaurant, but I've never actually previously succeeded in making it taste quite the way it does. This recipe, nails it. So can't wait to get into it. And I guess I'll be submitting forcing everybody to eat Chinese or Chinese-ish food for a bit.
I don't think there'll be any complaints. I like the sound of that smashed cucumber salad. That's look, I've got the book at home as well.
Have you? Oh, well, have a better look. Yes,
I will. And also, speaking of herbs, you have played beautifully into my hands, Kirsty, because my coriander has been going absolutely gangbusters, and I've got probably about 4 square meters of coriander growing at the moment.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
There's so much growing. And have a little look. As you can see here, hopefully you can see the little white flowers. It's about to start setting seed. And some people get really scared when their coriander starts setting seed and quickly rip it out and think it's no good. But I'm here to say, let it set seed, let it go absolutely crazy. And then once it's dried, you'll have these beautiful little balls of coriander that you can either roast up and put on a beautiful salad, like maybe that cucumber salad might have cumin seeds on it, or you can give them away to friends. Can we see that? Yeah. I've got whole packets of coriander seeds that I send to friends and people with my little competitions. It's just such a happy seeder, and the seeds will be very likely to just kind of scatter themselves on the ground as well if you just leave them to do their own thing. But
yeah, and they'll grow again. Yeah, it's the gift that keeps giving. Yeah,
gone back, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and they're pretty little flowers to put on a cake too.
Oh, I haven't tried them on a cake. I should do that. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah,
it's always good. Well, we're almost done now. If anyone has got a question, put it through. Everyone's quite quiet tonight. There's only a couple of questions coming through, but I can see that who is it? Gary is wondering what is one of your favorite articles to write. He wants to know, Kirsty, is it the profile pieces? Is it the book reviews? Is it the home stories?
Oh, profiles. I mean, I fall in love with everyone I interview. Everyone's got a story. A boss of mine, when I was a very young journalist, said, it's your job to find it. And I think that's the joy of the job, really. Meeting people, hearing their stories, finding out what makes them tick, what their life experience has been. It's just, it's why I do what I do and why I love to do it every day.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sure Gary from Melbourne is very happy to have you answering that one. And as someone who has been lucky enough to be interviewed by you, Kirsty, I think you do a really lovely job of treating every interview subject as if they are the number one and the superstar of the edition. So thank you on behalf of everyone that you've interviewed recently.
It's my pleasure.
No worries. Now, how can people get in touch with the magazine? Do you like people to contact you through Instagram or Facebook or through the website directly?
Well, probably through the website and by email. There's email addresses everywhere. And, I'm always looking for story suggestions, house suggestions, everything. So I rely on that network to keep me in touch around Australia. Obviously, I can't be everywhere. So we need people to talk to us, and we love it when they do.
Wonderful. Well, you've heard it here first on Library Lovers with Maya Linnell and the Libby app. That Australian Country Magazine is open for your suggestions. All right. Thank you, Kirsty, very much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And
thanks for having me.
Best of luck with getting those deadlines. I know that they seem to come around really quickly, don't they?
They certainly do. Who knew there were so many 8-week cycles in the year?
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you, Kirsty. Now we're going to move along to our librarian of the evening. Now, Meaghan Dew works for Yarra Libraries in Melbourne. And Meaghan has a background in book selling. She has a background in publishing, and she also loves connecting the people with the right books. Thank you for being our guest today, Meaghan.
Oh, thank you, Maya. Thank you for the invite today. It's been really lovely to hear everyone talk about things so far this evening. So, and I've really enjoyed Benjamin's book so far as well. So it was great to hear about that. So.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good read. If anyone hasn't got a hold of it yet, I highly encourage them to do so. Now, Meaghan, can you tell us, for people that aren't familiar with Yarra, the region, which area does your libraries encompass?
Right. So we're City of Yarra, so we do sometimes get confused. There's also a Yarra Plenty library service, so we do get each other's calls sometimes. But we cover a few of the inner suburbs in Melbourne, and we have branches in Fitzroy, North Carlton, Richmond, and Collingwood.
Excellent. Now, you are the Collections and Reader Development Library. What does a normal working day look like for you, Meaghan?
So I usually summarize my job by saying that my job is to buy books and talk about books, and it's a bit glib, but essentially it is broadly accurate. So a standard day for me might involve all the bits that you do see librarians doing in their library, so things like shelving, finding people's holds, returning items, and talking about books. But it also involves all the bits that kind of go on in the background that you don't see. So it would involve ordering new items from both digital and print suppliers based on holds and patron requests, and new items and reviews, and replacing items that have sadly fallen apart after too much love, as well as on a good day preparing for a program like our short story club that we run, maybe putting together some digital or physical displays, or maybe some social media posts as well. So a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, and a surprising amount of Excel spreadsheets and reporting. I don't usually mention that bit because it's not quite as much fun to talk about, but it is fun for me, luckily. So.
Oh, fantastic. It sounds like every day is quite different and a really varied workload, which would make for
Absolutely.
a fun working environment as well.
It definitely does. So it's a lot of stuff that that might not sound objectively interesting, but when it's about books, it generally is, which I really love. So.
Oh, lovely. Is it possible to narrow it down, Meaghan, to what your favourite part of that role is?
Oh, I mean, definitely getting the chance to talk about books with people and help them find the perfect read is absolutely my favorite part. So, yeah, definitely that. So whether that's as part of the short story club and having someone by the end of a session say that that they weren't sure they liked the story, but by the end of it, they're really keen to read more from an author, that's always really heartening. Or helping someone who maybe hasn't picked up a book in a little while and is looking for a little bit of a nudge in the right direction, find something that they love. Those are wonderful parts.
Oh, I can imagine that would be so heartwarming to see people come in and just, and share the fact that they haven't really been reading much, and then all of a sudden they're regularly coming through that door. I think that's lovely.
It is really wonderful part of what I do.
Yeah, great. Now, what's been happening at the Yarra libraries recently? I hear there's a winter warmers program going on. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it's statewide at the moment, but we're really encouraging people to make a little bit of time for themselves to read every single day. So whether that's a few minutes or an hour, whatever you can really spare, and just helping people take that time for themselves and take that time to spend with a book, whether that's an audio book or a physical book, with a few little challenges as well. So for example, one week the challenge was to read while doing something else, and audiobooks absolutely play into that very well. So definitely something I use to make the household chores I don't like as much a bit more exciting. So
I agree. Look, I have gotten my daughter, my middle child is the biggest reader in the whole household, and she'll do pretty much any cleaning task I ask, or she'll mow the lawns with these headphones on, and she'll have an audiobook going 12 hours a day if I'd let her. It's amazing to see that real love of the book and having that story read to her really, really, it really floats her boat, which is lovely.
Makes a huge difference. So it's not too late to get involved. The campaign does officially end at the end of this month. There's nothing that says you can't continue to make reading a little part of every day. Obviously something I'd recommend going forward.
Oh, wonderful. Now we've had a question from Casey, who's up in Queensland, and she said that she saw on the I think it was Facebook, little notes that librarians would find in the books when they're returned. Have you had anything interesting like that come your way?
Absolutely. So we do find a lot of things in books. I've certainly left the occasional bookmark in there myself. In good circumstances, people realize that they've left a photo or a postcard or something in and come back for it. But there are always a few unclaimed ones. But there have been some lovely notes that we've found in books on occasion as well. So I remember finding one where someone, oh, I'm so sorry, someone's doing an announcement here in the library. So I might maybe mute myself for a moment so you don't have to hear people be told that the library is closing soon.
That's fine. I think it's really interesting the way that libraries are, welcoming for everyone, and the way that in the wintertime you've got that beautiful heating. So I know that in our house, it's actually quite cold at the moment here in Southwest Victoria, where I'm located. And I imagine, we've got the fire running quite regularly. So at least with libraries, they've got that beautiful heating. So it's warm in the wintertime, it's cool in the summertime. Do you have people, Meaghan, that come through specifically looking for that spot just to be out of the weather and enjoying socializing as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think also a lot of people, or more people than previously, are working in some capacity from home. We have the second floor here at Bungungunungan North Fitzroy Library is entirely a quiet work and study area. There's part of our collection housed up here as well, but primarily people do use it as a work and study spot, and it is packed for the majority of the hours we're open. And recently we actually launched an open library program where people can actually apply to use their library card to access the library outside of standard operating hours. So from 8 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. at night. So if you've ever wished you could stay in the library past the close time or the announcement, that's absolutely something you can do now at certain branches.
Wow, can you tell me a bit more about that? That is fascinating. So people can just swipe their library card like they would with the hotel key?
Absolutely. Yeah, kind of like a 24-hour gym, except we don't expect you to exercise, and it's not quite 24 hours. But we did find there's obviously demand for example, we open at 10 o'clock, but there's a primary school right across the road from us at Bungungunungan. So people being able to access the library from 8 a.m. I've definitely come in a few times now to see a very tired looking parent with a small child who's obviously been waking up extremely early and has decided 8 o'clock's definitely the time to go to the library. But you just need to go through a small induction. Obviously, there's some sort of responsibilities associated with being in the space outside of the standard hours. Much like a gym, you can't swipe other people into the library. You need to get your access for yourself only. But then you can pick up your holds, you can use it as a study space, you can find some new items, many of the things you can do during standard hours, but just a bit of a self-service option.
That is amazing. I think we should see that happening all around Australia. That's very cool.
Fabulous. So we'd obviously love to see that. At the moment, it's available at Richmond and North Fitzroy libraries.
Lovely. Now, can you narrow it down out of all the wonderful books that you've read recently, Meaghan? What will you recommend tonight to our listeners?
Wow. Well, as a reader development librarian, it has to be more than one book. One of the glorious things about the library is you are definitely not limited to one item. And we always aim to send someone away with more than one. You've got, on a purely pragmatic level, you've got a better chance of hitting a home run in terms of people actually loving the item they go home with, because, everyone's after something different. So with that in mind, the first book I'd recommend is Bodies of Light by Jennifer Down. Now, I did pick this one before it won the Miles Franklin approximately 2 hours ago. But it seems a bit redundant for me to recommend it now, because I'm pretty sure the selection committee for that have already done so. But this is a Melbourne author. This is her third book and her second novel. And it's beautifully written, really well researched, really heartbreaking. I would use the word harrowing to describe it. So make sure you're in a space where that is something that you want to engage with. But if you are in a headspace where that's something you want to do, Bodies of Light, really beautiful book, really recommend it. For people who are not in the space to go to a book which I've used the adjective harrowing to describe, The Women in the Library, I just finished the other day by Solaria Gentile, and that is a very entertaining, meta, sort of very like tongue-in-cheek crime book, which might appeal to people who enjoyed the book that we've mentioned earlier today. And as a diehard fantasy and sci-fi fan, I really have to recommend for people who are looking for something short and funny and action-packed, Martha Wells' All Systems Red is the first of 4 novellas and 1 novel in the Murderbot series. So if sci-fi is your jam, or you're looking for something really short and entertaining, something maybe to kickstart your reading after a bit of a break, that's the smallest book that I've got here today, and I'd really recommend that one as well. So sorry to take the inch you've given me and run a mile, but hopefully that means there's something there for everyone.
Wonderful. And Meaghan, we were talking off camera about how instantly, as soon as that award was announced, the Miles Franklin for Bodies of Light, that the reservations just flooded in. Can you quickly give us a little recap on what happens there?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, sort of part of my job is buying books for the library, and part of that is running reports to see how many holds are against each item, and buying sort of extra copies to account for that, to make sure that nobody is waiting too long for their item. And I had a bit of a look about an hour after the Miles Franklin was announced, and I could see sort of there was 6 or 7 holds that had been placed in the last hour. So I thought, oh, it begins. So it was already quite a popular book at our library service. Jennifer Down is a Melbourne local. But it's definitely, I'm expecting it to increase quite a bit over the next few weeks. So good to recommend that it's also available as an audiobook. So
library will be closing in 5.
Wonderful. So I wanted to quickly pop in a recommendation. Now, this book here is by Emma Harcourt. She's a journalist. You might have seen her articles in The Australian. She's written a previous, I think it's called The Shanghai Wife, her historical book that also came out and was very popular. But this new one is out this month. It came out with HarperCollins, and it's based in 1496 Renaissance Italy. And it's all about an astronomer called Luna, who's hoping to just defy the social norms for women, young women of her age. And instead of getting married, she wants to really branch out into astronomy. So I thought I'll quickly sneak in a bit of a recommendation. And how gorgeous is that cover?
it's really beautiful, Maya. So
it's so pretty, isn't it? So I've only just started that one, but it's already grabbed me. So I can't wait to sink my teeth into a little bit more of that one. It's out now with HarperCollins Fiction. Now, before we leave, I would love to know, Meaghan, how do you like people to get in touch with your library?
I'd really suggest they start with the website, really. So you can just pop Yarra Libraries into Google, or you can type in the exact address if you prefer, which is, library.yarracity.vic.gov.au. And if you go to the contact us section, you can find a number of different options. So we've got our phone there, we've got email, you can find us on social media, any of those ways, and we'd be really happy to answer any of your questions. Of course, you can also, if you're a Yarra local or you work, study or play in the area, please come in and say hi.
Oh, wonderful. And we've had a question from Kate in Perth. She's wondering whether you're going to be joining the TikTok trend of different librarians putting funky videos together.
Definitely not part of my role, I'm afraid, but I really do admire Ballarat Libraries. I've been doing some beautiful TikToks and videos recently. I particularly enjoyed their It's a 10 but video recently, holding up different books and saying it's a 10 but, and the very things that made them maybe not as attractive as you think. So, and I also really love, they did a brilliant one for the Met Gala as well, comparing different Met Gala dresses to different book covers, which is pretty spectacular. So an extreme clap to whoever's doing their social media at the moment. They've done a gorgeous job.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being our guest tonight, Meaghan. It's really nice to hear what's happening at Yarra Libraries in Melbourne and to get a little bit of an insight into your role at the library. So thank you for being our guest tonight.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely.
No worries. And that just about wraps it up for us tonight on Library Lovers with Maya Linnell in the Libby app. I've been your host, Maya Linnell. I want to say a huge thank you very much to our guests, Benjamin Stevenson, with his fantastic book, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, out now with Penguin Random House. Also, thank you to Kirsty Mckenzie from the Australian Country magazine. You can find all of those fantastic magazines at your news agency. They're stocked in some supermarkets as well. And of course, you can get the digital version through the Libby app. And thanks to Meaghan from Yarra Libraries. So what's coming up? I want to tell you that there's lots of great things in the pipeline for library lovers. Next month, we'll have Tori Hashka, and her new book from Simon & Schuster is coming out. It's called A Recipe for Family, and it sounds like a great read. I haven't got my hands on a copy yet, but I look forward to sinking my teeth into it very soon when it arrives. We've also got Casey Withers, who's a narrator. She does audiobooks. She's narrated 2 of my novels, Rural Romances with Alan Unwin. and they are wonderfully narrated. So I can't wait to find out what goes on behind the scenes in the audio booth when they're putting together the book, the type of time frame it takes, all those good things we'll be asking her. And we've also got Roz coming to us from Melton Libraries in Victoria as well. So please mark the third Wednesday of every month in your calendar for library lovers, and we look forward to having your company. Now, if you cannot wait a full month for some more fantastic Zoom book goodness, then keep an eye out for Ben's book club. Ben Hobson is a fellow author just like me, and he puts together a show for the Libby app once a month as well. And his guest next Tuesday night is Tony Birch, and they'll be talking about Tony's latest book, The White Girl. So that is on Tuesday, the 26th of July, Ben's book club on Zoom, just like tonight. So I hope you've had a lovely time. I've also got some exciting news that we have Jane Harper coming on the show later this year, which is very exciting. So book October, the 3rd October, third Wednesday in October into your diaries, so you can make sure you don't miss that one. But in the meantime, stay warm, stay well, and keep reading more books. Thanks very much. Good night, folks.